It's it's just drugs in sport altogether. So some of the things that I've been looking into are obviously around it's clostebol that Jannik Sinner had on his skin. Sure, let's just backtrack a little bit. What's happened is he's currently in a ban, and he's in a ban that's neatly placed between two Grand Slams, so he's not going to miss a major tournament. In fact, he even comes back to do some warm-up tournaments before the Grand Slam, the French Open at the end of May. So a very neatly timed little ban that the Tennis Association has given him. But how that's come about, shall we timeline a little bit? So he burst onto the scene really in early 2024. He won his first Grand Slam, was the Australian Open. Then subsequently after that, he got drug tested at Indian Wells in March, and that's where he provided positive samples. Now, in February, his trainer bought clostebol in the form of trophedamine, which is like a cleansing spray for wounds that you can use, but it contains an anabolic steroid. And on the packaging, it says, big red letters, cross through a middle. It's a real picture, Joel. It says doping.
So by putting the spray on, is the argument that he got it into his bloodstream?
Look, that was his excuse, and it wasn't even sprayed on him. The fitness trainer gave it to the physio. The physio had a cut on his finger from using a scalpel. Anyway, irrespective of why he had a cut on his finger, had a cut on his little finger from a scalpel, used this spray to heal the cut, a spray that's only available in Italy. So he used it on his cut, had travelled and used it for a month, and then was using it at Indian Wells when he was massaging. The physio was then massaging Jannik Sinner. So they said that's how it got into his system. Jannik Sinner is saying, I've got, it's a form of dermatitis, psoriasis skin condition, same as what I've got. So I know it incredibly well. You get these lesions on your skin, and they can crack and open up, and they are, in essence, an open wound. So you can get creams and things into them. However, I know, having had psoriasis from head to toe, that you treat it every single day. You put cream and oil on it every single day, especially when you're doing sport, because you're getting massage oils on you, you're sweating, you'd like constant treatment of it to keep it at bay because it's so sensitive to extreme stresses. So he would have been using things anyway to treat his skin. But he said, physio has massaged me without gloves on, fine, but the physio's not washed his hands beforehand. So the physio's used this spray, cut on his finger, has then massaged Jannik Sinner, and they've said that's how the trace amounts have basically got into his system. I mean, there are so many barriers there, from the treatment that Sinner would use on his psoriasis, the massage oil or cream that the physio would use anyway, and the fact that it is from treating this little cut on his little finger. It's not like he's sprayed it all over his hands and he's rubbed it in. So the interesting thing is, the reason why it's banned is because, I keep saying it wrong, clostebol, it is an anabolic steroid. So it's the same as the testosterone gels, in essence, that used to be used like in East Germany. And those massage gels, they're no joke. You don't just need to inject someone with testosterone to get performance. Just putting these creams on and using these gels improves performance as well. So I was reading a study from the National Center for Biotechnology Information, and it's a very well researched document showing the use of gels topical, so just on the skin, in creams and gel form, that contain anabolic steroids to boost performance. So after 30 days and 90 days of treatment with these gels, they were getting 11 to 13 kilograms in gains in leg presses. So if you're leg pressing 150, 200 kilos, you're getting an additional like 5-10% on your leg press in just a 90-day period for a professional athlete.
Just from massage?
Just from the gel. Yeah. Just from using the gels topically on skin. So these are the benefits. So it's not like, oh, but they were using a cream, they weren't injecting steroids. That doesn't matter. Using these creams, what I want to stress um, is as illegal, and rightly so, because it gives these performance enhancing gains. Anyway, so he's come up with these.
Ban
Yeah,
doesn't reflect that though, does it?
the ban doesn't reflect that they were using a cream that has a doping control strike through in red listed on it. And it's also the fact that it's not available in other countries as well, because it goes against, like in the US, it goes against FDA rules because you can't use an anabolic steroid in creams. Like, it's just incredibly well known. And I'll talk about how well known it is. So anyway, he tests positive with urine samples. So not a blood sample. Blood sample would show it more clearly. A urine sample is even more diluted. So the amount you have to have from the get-go, and we're talking about, this is still just from what they said is a little cut on the finger, what the amount you have to have from the get-go to get through all of those creams, all of those barriers, stay in his system in competition, and then have a urine sample, which is the most diluted form of a sample. It's just so unbelievable.
Too far-fetched, isn't it?
So he got told on the 4th of April by the International Tennis Integrity Agency, you're going to be handed a provisional suspension, and this is why. They then respond same day and say, this is with an urgent application, like, these are the reasons why we think there's a contamination, basically, of my sample. And then straight away, Tennis Integrity Agency lift the ban on April the 5th, the very next day. A week later, he then reaches the semi-finals in Monte Carlo. He then gets told a week later that he has to do another appeal for the ban to be lifted. They then do the provisional ban lifted properly April the 20th. So they did it provisionally first off just to let him play the next tournament. Then they implemented it again and he got it lifted again. So Djokovic has come out and basically said top players getting special treatment. Like, the fact that he was able to play these tournaments whilst under investigation and without having a hearing was crazy. Anyway, in the end, he rises to world number one. Despite all of the investigations, he's still playing and winning, rises to world number one in June. And then he submitted legal documents June the 19th to explain the circumstances of the tests. So they didn't actually produce any evidence about it or declare any of the stuff about the psoriasis that he had and the skin lesions. Now, what I have done is I looked at the Indian Wells tournament and the pictures of him playing, and there's no visible skin lesions on him at all. And I know when I had it, it's like patches, like you get patches all over your arms, in your joints, and you'd be able to see it on him because he's playing in shorts and t-shirt. There's nothing particularly visible. So it's not that he has it to the extreme level where it'd be considered even moderate coverage of his body. So just so much of it feels very, very far-fetched. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. And in the end, Tennis Integrity say, we take your excuse as it is, or your reason as it is. And then WADA come out and say, we don't. So we're going to appeal against you not banning him. So World Anti-Doping Authority say, we're going to appeal now against you not banning him. And then they say, okay, we'll open it up again. And then International Tennis or Integrity, this happens after he then has won the Australian Open again in January. They then say, okay, we will open it up again and review it. They have a behind closed doors session, Tennis Integrity and Jannik Sinner's team, and they come to an agreement that they will not list him at fault. They accept his reasons, but it is still a failed drug test, so he'll face the minimum amount of suspension and won't be available to play until the first week of May. So coincidentally, the French Open, the next big tournament, happens at the end of May. So he is eligible for the next big tournament and the tournament that precedes it as well. So he'll be able to play, I think it's in Madrid. I might be wrong, but I think it's like in Madrid on clay a week or two before. So WADA, basically, they appealed that he wasn't going to get banned. Tennis Integrity say, we're now banning him. It's the minimum ban, but we are banning him. So WADA then have to wheel it back, and their petition has now been accepted. They now can't make a claim against it. So they were looking to ban him for 2 years because Tennis Integrity Agency hadn't done anything. And now WADA don't have a leg to stand on because he's been banned by the Tennis Integrity Agency.
For the minimum period.
for the minimum period and the feedback from tennis players across the game. Tennis players that have had similar contaminated samples have been immediately banned for 1 to 2 years without appeal. So one specific one was a British junior women's player, Tara Moore. She had it. And then other players have had similar length bans without successful appeal with the same contamination. So that's where we stand with Jannik Sinner and his far-fetched, but apparently believable by the right agencies, drug allegations.
Be interesting the reaction he gets at Wimbledon this year, I think.
I think he'll get widely booed.
Yeah, I think he'll struggle to come back from that one.
Will he? Because it seems like he's been protected by the sport.
At tennis, A has no stars, but the court of public perception will always be that he's a cheat. It's almost impossible to shift. So I think it'll be a monkey he carries on his back forever.
Yeah, he might still win titles.
Yeah, but everyone, to a lot of people, like, asterisk, like the fact they haven't stripped him of anything over that time is a little bit ropist.
Disgrace, isn't it? Yeah, it doesn't leave a very nice taste in the mouth at all.
I think the only player that was spoken about is Nick Kyrgios. Kyrgios pronounces the complete butcher's name there. But yeah, I think that's the one player who's been outspoken about it. But to be fair, he's always involved in controversy, so probably not getting
the consistency of the ruling is so out of whack on deal. Everyone's like, what's really going on? But I mean, obviously I'm not a diehard tennis fan, but someone that watches majors every now and then, it couldn't seem like it's in any worse of a spot than it has been in my lifetime. Like, you've lost pretty much every major star, and your next up and comer to be going down in a drugs cheat feud is like, it couldn't be happening at a worse time for them.
I mean,
yeah, definitely.
It just highlights even the Nadals, the Federers, the Murrays. They went years and years without any sort of controversy, with drugs, and now it's like the one player who's actually now starting to, carry the sport, should I say? I mean, other than Carlos, is now involved in this. Like, it just speaks to it's testament to those guys, man.
They carry the sport.
Yeah, they carry the sport.
Not just carried it, but they carried it so well.
Yeah, well, grace.
The next phase was always going to be a step down.
Yeah, so Tim Henman said, so Djokovic, he said about the favouritism. Tennis pundit and former British one, Andrew Castle, said talk of settlement or agreement when it comes to drug bans makes people feel very uncomfortable. Huge reputational risk on all sides. You said about what Kyrgios had said. It's just all over. All of his fellow competitors. There's only one, Feliciano Lopez, that has come out and said, fairly believable. It's very clear. He said he's fairly clear he hasn't done anything to enhance his performance. That's proven.
Interesting. I haven't heard anyone go into this much detail about it the way you have as well. So, like, it's nice to hear that's all that perspective and the full picture, because I literally just thought, just from the news reports, it was just probably he just used it because he needed to use it.
Yeah, and then you think, like, the contamination thing, you think, like, maybe there is something in that, but when you understand that for the creams that you would use, for the ointments that you would use, one for psoriasis, but also for treating cuts, and a cut on a little finger, like, how much are you using that is contaminating someone else's, but it's crazy. Anyway, Clostebol, interestingly, because it's widely used in Italy and has been in Italian sport over the years, it's like a well-known thing. It was in Serie A, and actually it was in German football as well. So Joachim Low was questioned about it after Germany had won the World Cup, because it was his former physio, and he'd basically said, I wouldn't have questioned anything that the physio gave to me or told me to use or told me to take. Like, you trust the medicine and you trust that they know that they're keeping to their letter of the law for the benefit of the players. But yeah, it was used in Serie A in the 1980s, and there were a lot of drug conspiracies around then. And similarly, it actually in Italian tennis as well in the 90s and early 90s, it's been a thing too. I'll just go on to the very, very last thing. Alberto Salazar, we know him famously as the leader of the Nike Oregon project. Mo Salah.
Well, have his lawyers on the phone.
Who you don't believe is,
I don't believe. No. And you'll hear a little bit. You'll hear a little bit now. So basically, Alberto Salazar exchanged emails with the Nike CEO, Mark Palmer, about arranging an experiment to determine how much testosterone gel, this is documented emails, how much testosterone gel could be applied to the skin of an athlete before they fail a drug test.
It's damning.
Yes, Salazar was subsequently banned for trafficking testosterone as part of the experiment by the US Anti-Doping Agency. Galen Rupp, Mo Farah's training partner, closest training partner, was said to have used testosterone gel from the age of 17, and the whistleblower, a guy called Steve Magnus, who was the whistleblower that came out about Salazar and got a lot of criticism for it as well from all of these Nike athletes. He said at a training camp in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 2012, he was in an apartment that was shared by Salazar and Mo Farah, and testosterone gel was out in the apartment when he was...
Terrible. Oh, beautiful
Maybe
sport.
Mo Farah didn't notice.
Yeah, maybe they were just using the other guy as like a guinea pig to see how far they could drive him before they infected Mo.
So all of this is caveated with allegedly from a whistleblower. I have to say, for legal reasons, but Salazar and his disgraced doctor, Jeffrey Bowen, were using it on all athletes.
Sure.
It was used by the physios, it was used by the doctors, they were using testosterone gel freely throughout the camps. So, yeah, if we believe that Mo Farah was the one single athlete that didn't use it, but he was Salazar's prized athlete, then that's absolutely fine. That's not the side of the fence line.
Fair point. Allegedly.
I'm glad that you got that off your chest.
I was going to say, yeah.
Honestly,
I spent mornings, it's Monday.
that's
I don't know,
beautiful.
but yeah, like it's the cheating thing, and it may be widely done by other
where do
athletes,
you stand on the everybody does it, so I have to do it to compete?
which is a common phenomenon in cycling. Is everyone in the peloton actually believed that everyone in the peloton was doing it, so they had to just to stay in the peloton, let alone get to the front of the pack. But yeah, like if you want to have an open category, then you have an open category. If you want to have a clean category, then you have a clean category. But then it just comes down to state-sponsored sport, doesn't it? What we had with East Germany and what we had with the Soviet Union, and the US, what you had in British Olympic cycling too, what we've seen in British cycling with Team Sky, that it's like 50% of them were diagnosed as having asthma, but only after they'd gone into the Team Sky program. And then they got given asthma medication that was more performance enhancing rather than what you would actually give to someone to treat asthma. So yeah, it's everywhere. And it leaves a sour taste, and it takes away from some sport, and it takes away from some competitions, like we know, 100 meters in athletics specifically.
Yeah.
What can you do about it other than having a little bit of a bitch on a podcast?
Yeah, exactly. And watching it through a different perspective, I think, like saying 100 meters, I'm always a bit like, okay, pinch of salt.
Great. Glad you guys had so many thoughts on that.
I mean, I'm glad that you researched it.
Yeah, same.
I learned a lot.
I learned a lot
I
as
actually
well.
learned a lot.
I also now have a very cynical view of all athletes.
I mean, it's hard not to... I mean, I had no idea that you could apply anabolic steroid gels to the skin and see an uplift in performance. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? And with the Sinner thing in particular, I saw the 2 months, and like without doing any reading at all, I'm a bit like, that feels a bit strange. Like,
really?
This thing for a long time. You've eventually banned him for a very short period of time. What's going on there? So I think the fact that you've shone a light on that, for me, gives me a lot of clarity about the situation. And I'm sure the listeners will be thankful as well.
Yeah. Every day's a learning day, and you've educated the masses.
Are most people just a bit apathetic to it, though? Do we think?
I think it's a bit hidden, isn't it? I assume you've had to go to great lengths to get that information.
I don't think Sinner's is big a name as well as the Federers or the Nadals.
In global sport, yeah,
Global
you're
sport.
right. He's not.
Bigger story if it was one of the big four.
And you talk about the whistleblower on Salazar, you could probably apply similar things to the Irish journalist who, was it David Walsh? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
People who write about these things, people who talk about these things, risk their careers. And that's why, as well, it doesn't get spoken about.
Yeah, it's a good point. Unless your career is speaking about it, which I guess in essence is what David Walsh's has become.
Yeah. He's like I say, he's made his name off being that guy who called out Lance Armstrong race.
All right, we will call it a day there then. If you have enjoyed listening along, then you can like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and you can get in touch at allsportspods@gmail.com, and we will catch you on the next one.